Velocity Motors just issued its fourth major recall this year, affecting over 2.7 million vehicles worldwide. Their stock has plummeted 73% in just 6 months. And yesterday, their CFO resigned effective immediately, with no replacement named. It's over. The numbers don't lie. Velocity Motors is bleeding money at a rate that no company can survive. And yet, the mainstream media won't tell you the full story. But I will. While automotive journalists keep praising their innovation and bold vision, the reality behind closed doors is far darker. Factory workers are being laid off by the thousands. Dealers are stuck with unsellable inventory. And customers? They're left with vehicles that might be worthless in months. This isn't just another bump in the road for the automotive industry. What's happening at Velocity Motors signals the death of an American icon, a company that just 3 years ago was valued higher than Ford and GM combined. The collapse of Velocity Motors isn't just about cars. It's about American manufacturing. It's about Wall Street manipulation. It's about corporate lies sold to unsuspecting consumers. And it's about time someone told the truth. Remember these? The promise of American ingenuity reborn. Affordable electric vehicles for everyone. A new era of transportation that would leave the dinosaurs behind. Their words, not mine. When Velocity Motors launched in 2015, it was positioned as the antidote to stagnant automotive giants. Its founder, tech billionaire Lucas Reed, promised to reinvent the wheel with vehicles that were electric, autonomous, and connected in ways traditional automakers couldn't match. Wall Street believed him. Silicon Valley backed him. And for a while, so did America. But what we're witnessing now isn't just one recall. It isn't just one factory shutdown or one bad quarter. This is systemic collapse. And while CNBC and Bloomberg gently call it a restructuring or strategic realignment, the truth is much simpler. Velocity Motors is dying. Fast. Why isn't this front-page news? Follow the money. Traditional media outlets depend on automotive advertising dollars. Business networks need access to executives for interviews. No one wants to be the first to say the emperor has no clothes. But I don't need their advertising dollars. And I don't need a Christmas card from Lucas Reed. What I need, what we all need, is the truth. In 2022, Velocity Motors spent $493 million on advertising. That buys a lot of silence. That buys a lot of positive coverage. That buys headlines like temporary setbacks instead of terminal decline. But the evidence is overwhelming. This isn't a temporary setback or a speed bump on the road to success. This is the beginning of the end, and it's happening faster than anyone expected. In the next hour, I'm going to show you exactly why Velocity Motors is collapsing, who's responsible, and what it means for the future of American manufacturing. I'll reveal internal documents that the company never wanted public. You'll hear from former executives speaking out for the first time. And you'll see, in precise detail, how the decisions made in boardrooms are destroying lives in small towns across America. This isn't speculation. This is the anatomy of a collapse, and it's happening right before our eyes. Let's talk numbers. Cold, hard facts that can't be spun by PR teams or buried in footnotes of quarterly reports. Since January, Velocity Motors has recalled 3.7 million vehicles. That's not a typo. 3.7 million cars and SUVs with defects so severe they required immediate attention. For context, that's more vehicles than they produced in the last 2 years combined. Think about that. They're recalling more cars than they're making. It's like trying to bail out a boat while drilling new holes in the hull. And it gets worse. In the last quarter alone, Velocity Motors burned through $4.2 billion in cash. That's $46 million of losses every single day. $1.9 million every hour, $32,000 every minute. By the time I finish this sentence, they've lost another $100,000. Their stock price tells the same story. On November 15th last year, Velocity Motors hit an all-time high of $392 per share. This morning, $28.43. That's a 93% drop in value in less than a year. Velocity Motors has lost more market value in 9 months than the entire GDP of Portugal. But it's not just shareholders feeling the pain. Velocity's market share in the electric vehicle segment, once their crown jewel, has collapsed from 26% to just 7% in 18 months. And here's where it gets truly dire: their debt. Velocity Motors currently owes $17.8 billion to creditors. Their next major bond payment of $2.3 billion is due in less than 90 days. And according to their last financial filing, they have just $1.9 billion in cash on hand. The math isn't complicated. They literally don't have the money to pay what they owe. Industry analysts typically use something called the Altman Z-score to predict bankruptcy. Any score below 1.8 suggests a company is headed for bankruptcy. General Motors hit 1.3 just before their 2009 bankruptcy. Velocity Motors' current Z-score is 0.78. Let me repeat that. 0.78. That's not just in the danger zone. That's in the death zone. I bought my Velocity EV9 last year for $72,000. The dealer just offered me $23,000 for a trade-in. It's not even a year old. Michael T., Denver. My lease residual was supposed to be $42,000. Now the finance company says it might be worth $15,000 when my lease ends. They're already warning me about a massive balloon payment. Sarah K., Chicago. I put down a $5,000 deposit on a car that might never be delivered, and now they're not responding to refund requests. James L., Phoenix. These aren't isolated incidents. These are symptoms of a company in free fall, and the worst is yet to come. To understand why Velocity Motors is collapsing, we need to understand how they got here. This isn't bad luck. This isn't just market conditions. This is the result of specific, catastrophic decisions made by leadership. The problem started with Velocity's fundamental promise: affordable electric vehicles with premium features and 500-mile range. It was the perfect pitch to investors and consumers. It was also, as we now know, completely impossible with current technology. Our batteries cost 40% less than the competition. Our motors are 30% more efficient. Our production system will revolutionize manufacturing. None of these claims were true, not even close. We knew the numbers didn't add up. The battery technology just wasn't there yet. But when engineers raised concerns, they were sidelined or fired. The message from leadership was clear: fake it till you make it. This fake it till you make it approach might work for mobile apps or social media platforms. But when you're building 2-ton vehicles that carry families at highway speeds, the consequences are very different. The rush to market led to corner cutting on an industrial scale. Velocity's much-hyped revolutionary manufacturing system was supposed to be 5 times more efficient than traditional auto assembly. In reality, it was a disaster. Traditional automakers spend years testing new production techniques before implementing them. Velocity tried to reinvent a century of manufacturing expertise overnight. The result? Quality control problems on a scale the industry has never seen. Industry standard defect rates hover around 80 parts per million. Toyota, the gold standard, achieves rates below 30 parts per million. Velocity Motors' defect rate? Over 4,500 parts per million. Look at this. The door doesn't even line up with the frame. There's a gap you can fit your finger through. This is a $65,000 vehicle, not a kit car. Robert M., Dallas. Imagine buying a brand new SUV for $65,000 and finding out the battery management system fails after just 18 months. That's not bad luck. That's a systemic problem. But quality issues were just the beginning. Velocity's second fatal mistake was their expansion pace. In just 5 years, they built factories in 7 countries. They launched operations in 23 global markets. They expanded their model lineup from 2 vehicles to 11. This might sound impressive to Wall Street, but in the auto industry, this kind of expansion is suicide. Even Toyota, with all their resources and experience, takes 5 to 7 years to properly enter a new market. Velocity tried to do it in 18 months. It's like watching someone try to run a marathon at sprint speeds. The collapse was inevitable. The third fatal error? Financial engineering that would make Enron blush. To fund their impossible growth targets, Velocity created a web of off-balance sheet entities to hide debt. They used aggressive revenue recognition to book sales before vehicles were even delivered. And they capitalized expenses that should have been recognized immediately. The result was financial statements that looked miraculous to the untrained eye and deeply troubling to anyone who understood accounting. What I see in Velocity's financials reminds me of patterns we saw at companies like WorldCom and Enron. The aggressive accounting, the special purpose entities, the related party transactions. These are classic red flags. But perhaps the most damaging decision was Velocity's approach to its dealer network. Traditional automakers build relationships with dealers over decades. These partnerships create stability and customer service infrastructure. Velocity decided to reinvent this model too, with catastrophic results. They forced dealers to invest millions in facility upgrades. They demanded exclusive showrooms. And then, just as these investments were made, they slashed dealer margins from 8% to just 2%. We invested $4.2 million in our facility because we believed in the brand. 6 months later, they cut our margins to the bone and started undercutting us with online sales. Now we're stuck with a specialized facility, millions in Velocity-specific tools, and no way to recoup our investment. These weren't minor missteps. They were fundamental structural failures in Velocity's business model. And now, the bill has come due. Carsonville was once called the town that Velocity built. When the company announced its flagship factory here in 2017, it was like winning the lottery. 3,500 direct jobs. Thousands more in supporting businesses. A rebirth for a community that had been struggling since the 2008 recession. Now it's becoming a ghost town. Last month, Velocity laid off 2,800 workers with just 48 hours' notice. No severance, no extension of benefits, just a text message telling them not to come in Monday. We showed up to work one morning and the gates were locked. No warning, no future. I have 3 kids, a mortgage, and now, nothing. 17 years in automotive manufacturing, and this is how it ends. Michael D., assembly line worker. The impact ripples far beyond the factory walls. Velocity's presence transformed Carsonville. Housing prices doubled. New businesses opened. The tax base expanded, funding new schools and infrastructure. Now, that progress is reversing at terrifying speed. Our diner depends on the factory workers. Since the layoffs, our business is down 70%. We've already let go of 4 servers. By Christmas, we'll probably be closed for good. And we're one of dozens of businesses in the same situation. Eleanor W., owner of Ellie's Diner. The Carsonville Food Bank served an average of 80 families per week last year. Last week, they served 643. And their resources are stretched to breaking point. We're seeing people who never thought they'd need help. Former Velocity engineers, quality supervisors, People who were making six figures months ago. Now they can't feed their families. Pastor James Wilson, Carsonville Community Outreach. But the human cost extends beyond manufacturing communities. Velocity has over 370,000 customers who are now facing a nightmare scenario, owning vehicles from a potentially bankrupt manufacturer. My Velocity Thunderbolt needs a new control module. It's been on back order for 4 months. The car is completely undrivable. I'm still making $980 monthly payments on a car that sits in my garage. And if the company goes under, I'll be stuck with a very expensive paperweight. Teresa L., San Diego. For commercial customers, the situation is even more dire. We have 47 Velocity delivery vans. We're already having trouble getting parts. If they go bankrupt, our entire operation could be paralyzed. We're talking about potentially millions in losses. Marcus J., Fleet Manager, Regional Delivery Service. And then there are the dealers, often family businesses that have invested everything in the Velocity brand. My family has been in the car business for 3 generations. We bet big on Velocity. $7 million in facility upgrades, specialized training, dedicated staff. Now we're sitting on $3.2 million in inventory that we can't sell even at cost. This could end us. Richard T., Dealer Principal, Premier Velocity. These aren't just statistics. These are real lives being shattered by corporate failure. Workers who trusted their futures to Velocity. Communities that welcome the company with open arms. Customers who believe the marketing promises. All of them now facing an uncertain future as Velocity's collapse accelerates. And the worst part? Much of this suffering was preventable. The collapse of Velocity Motors isn't happening in isolation. It's sending shockwaves through the entire automotive ecosystem. Velocity works with over 2,300 suppliers. Many of these companies retooled their entire operations to meet Velocity's specific requirements. Some built dedicated facilities. Others invested millions in specialized equipment. Now they're facing their own existential crisis. We invested $38 million in a facility dedicated to Velocity components. They represent 74% of our business. If they go under, we go under. And so do the 340 families that depend on our payroll. Sandra M., CEO of AutoComp Solutions. The ripple effects extend to unexpected places, local governments that provided tax incentives, universities that created Velocity-specific training programs, even real estate markets and communities where Velocity promised expansion. This was supposed to be Velocity's $600 million technology center in Phoenix. Construction halted 3 months ago. The company owes contractors more than $47 million. The site now sits abandoned, a monument to broken promises. But the impact goes beyond Velocity's immediate orbit. The company's collapse is changing how investors view the entire EV industry. Venture capital investment in electric vehicle startups has plunged 64% since Velocity's problems became public. The contagion is spreading to other electric vehicle manufacturers, even those with solid fundamentals. Established automakers are also recalibrating their electric vehicle strategies. Ford, GM, and Volkswagen have all announced delays to EV investment plans in recent months. The industry-wide transition to electric vehicles, once seen as inevitable, now faces serious questions. Velocity was the poster child for the EV revolution. Their collapse creates doubt about the entire business model. Investors are asking hard questions. Is battery technology really ready? Is consumer demand actually there? Can anyone make money selling EVs? These weren't questions being asked a year ago. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, Global Automotive Analysis Group. The timing couldn't be worse for climate goals. Transportation accounts for 29% of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. Electric vehicles are a crucial part of emissions reduction strategies. Velocity's failure threatens to set back adoption by years. Meanwhile, Chinese EV manufacturers are accelerating their expansion plans. BYD, NIO, and XPENG have all announced increased production targets in recent months. The technology leadership that America briefly held in electric vehicles is shifting eastward at alarming speed. This isn't just about one company failing. This is about America's position in the next generation of mobility. This is about thousands of high-skill manufacturing jobs. This is about billions in economic activity. And right now, it's all at risk because one company tried to move too fast, promise too much, and deliver too little. Velocity's collapse isn't happening without precedent. The automotive graveyard is filled with once promising companies that failed to navigate changing markets, technology shifts, or financial challenges. Remember Packard? Once America's premier luxury automaker, it disappeared after a failed merger with Studebaker in the 1950s. Or consider Studebaker itself, an innovative company that couldn't match the economies of scale of the Big Three, finally closing its doors in 1966 after 114 years in business. More recently, we've witnessed the near-death experiences of giants like Chrysler and General Motors during the 2008 financial crisis, saved only by massive government intervention. But perhaps the most relevant parallel to Velocity's situation is the story of Preston Tucker and his Tucker 48 automobile. Like Velocity's Lucas Reed, Tucker was a charismatic visionary who promised revolutionary technology. Like Velocity, Tucker raised millions from enthusiastic investors. And like Velocity, Tucker found that revolutionary automotive innovation is harder than it looks. Tucker produced just 51 vehicles before the company collapsed amid investigations and financial troubles. The difference? Tucker's impact was limited by the scale of his operation. Velocity has hundreds of thousands of vehicles on the road. They have billions in obligations. Their collapse will be orders of magnitude more damaging. There are other instructive examples. Saturn, GM's attempt to reinvent American car manufacturing in the 1980s and 90s, started with enormous promise and public excitement. Sound familiar? Despite initial success, Saturn eventually succumbed to GM's internal politics and financial pressures. By 2009, the brand was dead, another automotive dream that couldn't survive reality. More directly comparable is Fisker Automotive, an electric vehicle startup founded in 2007 that produced the luxury Fisker Karma. Despite stunning designs and celebrity endorsements, Fisker declared bankruptcy in 2013 after producing fewer than 2,500 vehicles. But here's what makes Velocity different: scale. Tucker built 51 cars. Fisker built 2,500. Velocity has over 370,000 vehicles on American roads alone. General Motors and Chrysler were saved by government intervention in 2008 because they were deemed too big to fail. With over 18,000 employees and $17.8 billion in debt, Velocity might be approaching that territory. The question now is whether they'll receive the same lifeline, and whether any intervention would even be enough to save them. History suggests the answer is no. We're experiencing growing pains, not existential threats. Our fundamentals remain strong, and we're taking decisive action to address production challenges. Marcus Thompson, Velocity Motors Communications Director, August 15th. That statement was made just 8 days before Velocity announced the layoff of 2,800 workers and the indefinite suspension of production at their Michigan facility. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was deliberate deception. On the left, public statements from Velocity executives about minor quality issues and temporary production adjustments. On the right, internal emails obtained by my team showing executives discussing catastrophic failure rates and unsustainable warranty costs. The contrast couldn't be more stark. This email, sent by Velocity's Chief Operating Officer to the executive team on July 3rd, states, Warranty claims are running at 340% of projections. At current rates, we're looking at over $2.1 billion in warranty costs for vehicles already sold. This is an extinction-level event if we don't address it immediately. Yet just 2 days later, the same executive told CNBC that quality issues were well within industry norms and would have minimal financial impact. The cover-up extends to Velocity's financial situation. While publicly touting strong liquidity and multiple years of runway, internal documents show executives scrambling to secure emergency financing. This internal assessment from Velocity's Treasury Department, dated just 6 weeks ago, states, "Current burn rate will exhaust cash reserves by Q1. Existing credit lines fully tapped. Bond markets effectively closed to us given current ratings. Strategic alternatives must be pursued immediately." Translation: they're running out of money fast. But perhaps the most troubling aspect of the cover-up involves safety issues. Velocity has publicly maintained that their recent battery system recall was an abundance of caution over a theoretical issue. Internal testing documents tell a different story. Engineers identified the thermal runaway risk in pre-production testing. The issue was flagged in no fewer than 7 internal safety reports. Production launched anyway, with executives betting that a software fix could be developed before problems emerged in customer vehicles. That bet failed catastrophically. Velocity has now acknowledged 26 thermal events in customer vehicles. But internal documents suggest the number may be much higher, with dozens of additional incidents classified under different categories to avoid regulatory scrutiny. Why maintain this facade when the reality is so dire? The answer is simple: time. Every day, Velocity can maintain the illusion of stability is another day they can try to secure emergency funding. Another day, they can sell vehicles to unsuspecting customers. Another day, executives can quietly sell their shares before the inevitable collapse. Speaking of which, Velocity executives have sold over $342 million in personal shares over the past 9 months. The very people publicly declaring confidence in the company's future are privately heading for the exits as fast as possible. They want you to think everything is fine, but the documents tell a different story, and time is running out. What happens next for Velocity Motors? Based on our investigation, there are 3 plausible scenarios. The most likely outcome is a Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing within the next 90 days. This would allow Velocity to continue operating while restructuring its debt and operations. Under this scenario, shareholders would likely be wiped out completely. Bondholders would take significant haircuts, and the company would emerge smaller, focused on fewer models and markets. The human cost would be severe: thousands more layoffs, dozens of closed dealerships, and a drastically reduced supplier network. For customers, this scenario means significantly reduced service options, delayed parts availability, and accelerated depreciation of their vehicles. The second possibility is acquisition by a larger automaker or technology company. Several have reportedly conducted due diligence on Velocity's assets in recent weeks. The most likely buyers would be Chinese automakers looking to gain a foothold in the U.S. market, or possibly a technology company seeking to enter the automotive space. In this scenario, the Velocity brand might survive, but the company's ambitious vision would not. An acquirer would cherry-pick valuable technology and manufacturing assets while discarding unprofitable product lines and facilities. Current Velocity customers would face uncertainty about ongoing support for their specific models. Some might find their vehicles effectively orphaned if they don't fit the acquirer's plans. The final scenario is government intervention, similar to the auto industry bailouts of 2008 to 2009. With 18,000 jobs at stake and critical EV technology in the balance, there would be strong political pressure for intervention. However, Velocity faces major obstacles to government support. Unlike GM and Chrysler in 2008, Velocity isn't a century-old institution with millions of vehicles on the road. It's a new company that made big promises it couldn't keep. Any government support would come with stringent conditions, new management, drastic restructuring, and likely a forced merger with an established automaker. Whichever path they choose, one thing is clear. The company we knew is gone forever. The ambitious vision of affordable, high-performance electric vehicles for everyone has collided with reality. The promises made to investors, customers, employees, and communities cannot be fulfilled. What remains is damage control, minimizing the fallout from one of the most spectacular corporate collapses in American history. The story of Velocity Motors isn't just about one company's failure. It's a cautionary tale about hype in the age of disruption. It's about the dangerous gap between Silicon Valley promises and manufacturing reality. Most of all, it's about what happens when we allow corporate storytelling to override fundamental business principles. As Velocity's situation deteriorates, the questions for consumers become increasingly urgent. Would you still buy a car from a company on life support? Would you invest thousands in a vehicle that might have no factory support in 6 months? How many more billions can they burn before the lights go out? The mainstream business media won't ask these questions. They're too dependent on advertising dollars and access. But we must ask them, because thousands of jobs, billions in investments, and the future of American manufacturing hang in the balance. If you own a Velocity vehicle, now is the time to make contingency plans. Document every issue, accelerate any warranty claims, and seriously consider whether to keep a vehicle from a manufacturer that may not exist to support it. If you're considering buying a Velocity vehicle, even at the fire sale prices now appearing, understand the risk you're taking. The deepest discounts in the industry might still be too expensive if you're left with an orphaned vehicle and no support network. The collapse of Velocity Motors isn't just possible. Based on the evidence we've presented, it's probable. The only questions are when it happens and how much damage it causes. I'll continue tracking this story as it develops, bringing you the information that others won't. Because you deserve the truth, not corporate spin, not financial media half-truths, but the unvarnished reality of what's happening. For an American automotive icon born just a decade ago, the end may be just months away. And when the final chapter is written, the collapse of Velocity Motors will stand as one of the most spectacular corporate failures in modern history. The warning signs were there all along. We just had to look past the hype to see them.